Okay, welcome back to part two of this discussion on how we can talk about scaling writes into Cockroach database using Apache Nifi. In this section, we're going to talk about what we can do with Nifi to scale up that ingestion. So first, what is Apache Nifi? Well, it's actually a fantastic data flow tool. It allows you to get data from one point and transport it, convert it, and place it into another area whether that's a database or a file system or a message queue. It's very flexible and portable. Anyone can use it. It was originally created by the NSA way back when. I actually don't remember the exact date where it was created. I want to say it was just before 2010, maybe 2008. And then it was open sourced into the Apache Software Foundation in 2014 and is used widely by a variety of companies out there. All right, so let's talk about what you can do with Apache Nifi. So first, you can connect to just about anything. Like I mentioned, databases, message queues, REST APIs, picking up files from a file system like S3 or blob storage. Being able to have connectivity anywhere allows you to move data between a lot of different environments. The second big thing that you can do is not just transport that information, but also convert it. So if I do have a CSV file, I can convert it to JSON, I can convert it to an Avro message, and ship it off. It's very good at being able to do, connecting dots and being able to do something with the data in flight. The other thing is that you can scale this way up or way down. I've seen places where that you can push almost a terabyte of data a second through Apache Nifi by having a fairly large cluster. And I've also seen that you can scale this way down and run Nifi on very small devices, such as a Raspberry Pi. So very portable in that nature, and that you can run it in a lot of different types of infrastructure. The other piece too is that it's a huge code saver. So you might think, hey, I can just write a quick Python script to go do batch up a bunch of inserts into Cockroach database or other databases. But as you start building it out and productionizing it, you have to think about the amount of threads that you want to run to speed up the load, how to batch up those records, maybe compress that data. And as you go on, there's even more things, right? There you might get back pressure from the system. So how do you handle that? How do you handle all the scheduling of these things? So every time you start thinking about how to productionize these things, there's more and more code that you have to write to your particular scripts. Whereas Nifi just handles all this for you. And I'm going to show you that in a very simple demo. So how does Nifi work with Cockroach database? Well, it's really straightforward. There's nothing special you really have to do here. So in Apache Nifi, you have these things called processors. A processor is basically a unit of work that you want to do with the flow of information. So in Apache Nifi, there's processors like the put database record processor, which will allow you to ingest data right into Cockroach. And you can do that by setting up a connection pool for the put database record processors. And that connection pool can just use the Postgres JDBC driver. Very simple to connect to Cockroach. And like I said, from there you can ingest, you can query, you can do inserts, updates, deletes, upserts. Very simple process. The other way that you can interact with Cockroach database and Nifi is being able to use the change feed that can come out of Cockroach. So what is change feed? This is a way of capturing change data capture from a table in Cockroach database. So as a table is being inserted, updated, deleted, anytime you have an event or an action that happens on those tables, we can fire those off and into an event, or what we call a change feed. And there's a couple different use cases of why you might want to do this. You might want to replicate data to another location. You might want to use those events like you would as a traditional trigger in the database, or you might want to do some other event processing off the information that's occurring on the database. So this works with a variety of syncs of where you can send that data to. You can send data to Kafka. You can send it to file systems like S3 or Google Cloud Storage or Azure Blob Storage. You can even send it to an HTTP server and then pick it up through Nifi. So there's a lot of things of where you can ship this data off from different syncs and then have Nifi be able to pick it up and do something with it. And I have demos on this that we can show as well. All right. There's a few other nifty things that you can do with Nifi and Cockroach Database. So one is kind of neat, is that you can use the distribute load processor in Nifi if you don't actually have a load balancer for Cockroach Database. It's not required, but it's always recommended to use a load balancer with Cockroach Database to spread the load across the database. If you don't have a load balancer, you can use the distribute load processor to do this. So it's a nice little option to have, as you begin to build out your logic. Recently, I worked with another customer that was migrating a Mark Logic database, and if you're not familiar with Mark Logic, it is an XML-backed database, and we actually used Apache Nifi to convert XML documents into key value pairs to put in a Cockroach. So converting, XML documents into JSON documents, we can do rather easily. We have a JSON-B data type within the database. And this was a really simple migration that we can use to store the information in Cockroach. So you don't have to just do this with Mark Logic. You could do this with a lot of other databases, but Nifi gives you a lot of mechanisms for being able to pick up that information and doing conversion. And lastly, you can also use Nifi to send data between two Cockroach instances, right? So as change feed is sending data out maybe to Kafka, Nifi can pick that up and then put it into another Cockroach database or other databases. And again, we have some demos that can show some of these things. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our part 2 of our discussion. Now we're going to get into the demos. I hope you hang around to watch them. Thanks again.